Welcome to Natural Born Talents. Today's subject is how to teach students more effectively by understanding their auras. Now, before I get into the details on how to recognize different auras in students without having to take the test, I'm first going to go over the auras that make good teachers, as well as some of the present problems I'm seeing in the education system. Now, generally, everybody probably knows by now, the education system is designed for lockstep thinkers. If you don't know what lockstep thinkers are, I've made a video about the different kinds of thinking. But generally, it's the people who think in logical linear fashion. The other ways of thinking or studying or learning are intuitive, physical, emotional, and holistic. Again, see the video on that subject for more information. So what does that mean? That means that generally most people who are not logical linear thinkers will not do as well as logical linear thinkers in the present day education system we have. A good example of this is the way English is taught in Japan. Now, there are many reasons why Japan ranks the lowest among the Asian countries in English abilities. It is largely due to the way that they teach it. For example, they teach from grammar first by saying things like, "This is a pen," "I have a book." And of course, most of you realize that you would never have a conversation with anybody by going home to your mother, for example, or your father, and saying, "I have a book, there's a pen on the table," or anything like this. But that's how the language is taught in this country at this time. There are many reasons why this is so, and I'll have to make another video to explain all those reasons. There are many. But in any case, that is generally how education is taught throughout the world. An exception being Finland, who seems to have figured out that lockstep isn't the only way. Holistic thinkers, intuitive thinkers, physical thinkers, and emotional thinkers are at a disadvantage to the education system that we have now. And particularly countries like Japan, for example, they only look at those who do well at school to get them into a good or high-ranking company. Now, this is good for business, but it's not good for the country as a whole, as I'm seeing many students becoming what is known as hikikomori. Hikikomori means they no longer can socialize, they no longer want to be around school, they stay home and only watch video or play video games and the like. They become antisocial, they can't cope with any of the hardships of life. And this is largely due to the pressure placed on them to conform to one way of thinking, as well as the bullying that inherently comes with a competitive education system. And we're seeing more and more people beginning to resist this, or at least complain about this. But the problem I have with that is that parents in the economic environment we're in now, where the mother and the father both work, don't spend enough time with the children to discipline or to give them enough love or playtime to develop those skills. So it's the combination of computers, phones that are taking away time from parents, as well as parents being busy at work, and an education system that is geared towards lockstep thinkers only is beginning to cause a lot of headaches within this country. Add a pandemic to that, and I'm seeing children getting so weak and so emotionally unstable, it is very difficult for me to teach certain groups, especially the groups that don't have parents that give enough discipline and love to their children. Now, if you're teaching children in any country for that matter, it's a good idea to understand how auras work. Of course, the basic need of children to receive lots of attention, love, discipline, as well as quality education is a vital basic necessity. However, if you can master auras, you can take your teaching skills to another level. If you read the book Love Match as listed in the description below, or look at all the videos on this channel, and you master the different kinds of auras that there are in this world, you'll begin to recognize those personality types in your students. And for me, this was a great help to adjust my lessons in order to appeal to all the different kinds of thinking or learning habits. Now, of course, generally speaking, children are holistic thinkers when they're young, despite what aura they have. But nonetheless, some do think in a more logical, linear fashion. Some are so random, they come up with these amazing ideas that is glossed over by the education system we have today. Now let's start by looking at each aura. The first aura you see on our chart here is the orange. Now the orange is one of the most physical and challenging auras in the physical realm that there is. They are so involved with their needs to challenge a mountain or jump across a river in a rocket or something like this. They don't have the skills to make good teachers. But fortunately, they instinctively know that, and I have never seen an orange aura teacher within the education system here in Japan at this time. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be good stuntmen instructors or boxing coaches, for example. It just means that they're more geared towards the individual challenge against nature than anything else. So I never see these auras within the teaching field. Now let's go on to the next aura. The next aura is the red aura, and the red aura do make good teachers, generally speaking, from children all the way up to maybe, say, high school, possibly university if they're specializing in sports, paramedics or something like this, or even surgery for that matter. Now, generally, they make better coaches than they do intellectual teachers because they're such physical people and don't take abstract concepts so well. But I've seen many of this aura in the education system, and they generally do very well. The one thing they have to be careful of is their rage. If they have a hard time controlling their anger, they probably should not be around children. But most Reds that I know are aware of their explosive temper, and they know how to handle it fairly well. So, again, these make better coaches than teachers, but they certainly can become good nursery school teachers or first graders, second graders, up to the 6th grade. Junior high school and high school might be more difficult for them, but not impossible. The next aura is the magenta. Now, the magenta has a wild lifestyle and generally don't make great teachers per se. They're much better at doing things like fashion or pop art. However, they are very good with children because they're playful, and their randomness makes their silly antics very appealing towards children. So in some cases, the magenta can do quite well in the education system. However, the education system is too lockstepped, too boring for them to stay in it for long. They might specialize in something like play therapy for children, or go out on camping trips in the summer where they can have a lot of fun with the kids doing all kinds of crazy things. And in that way, the magenta does very well. But for a lockstep linear thinking style system, the magenta doesn't take it that serious and gets bored quickly. Now, the next aura is the yellow. The yellow does very well as a teacher. They make great support roles in teaching. They're very good leaders for children. They do very well in the nursery school all the way up to the 6th grade. They carry a lot of components that children need for their education system at the early age. Playful, fun-loving, practical, intelligent enough to follow a curriculum without getting bored to death, great support roles if another teacher takes over, and so on and so forth. The yellow is ideal for the younger students at the elementary school and under. They are not intellectuals, so I don't recommend yellows getting into, say, high school or university level. They can do it, but there are other auras that are better suited for that than the yellow. Yellows also make great coaches. I have worked with many yellows within the education system, and I found most of them very capable of working with children well. Next comes the green-tan aura. Now, this aura is too militant to work with children. It's too stubborn. It's too hard-nosed. It's too by the book. This aura tends to be too rigid to handle the daily antics of children and probably would lash out in a physical or hostile way. So this aura in particular does not work with children very well. However, this aura is very intelligent. Therefore, at the military academy, university level, and so on, they can do quite well. They are detailed-oriented, by-the-book, logical, linear thinkers. They're very good at strategy as well in case of military conflict. Now, the next group are the logical linear aura thinking group. And this group here is what the education system as we have today is generally geared towards. The first aura is the tan. The tan is a logical linear thinker. They make great professors. They make excellent teachers in the high school level on up. Children can be a little bit too emotionally demanding for their skills, so they're better off in advanced education as opposed to early education. They lack the playfulness and the compassion, say, the yellow aura has. However, they are so detailed-oriented that they make great lab technicians, great teachers in science and math. They can cover pretty much any kind of detail in, say, something as complex as a DNA helix. And also, they are not afraid of hard work in such intellectual pursuits, such as research, computer technicians, and so on. Which leads us to the next aura. The next aura is the green. Also very good at analyzing pretty much anything. Thinks similarly to the tan aura, but a much faster rate. This aura is a lockstep linear thinker, but at speeds and conclusions faster than most other auras. In other words, a tan aura may think like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whereas the green thinks 1, 2, 3, 10. They can skip all of the middle steps to reach a conclusion. And that's what makes them very difficult around children, because they tend to be perfectionists. And because this aura is a perfectionist aura, this is one of the hardest auras for me to deal with personally in the education system, because they try to make all of the students little computers and little robots in order to get as much information as efficiently and as quickly as possible, and run roughshod over the emotional and psychological needs of children. However, in the university, they excel. They can really do any kind of research that the tan aura can do, as well as come up with new creative ideas for things like research or inventions and the like. They're natural money makers, so they do better in business than anything else. However, I've seen many greens excel in the university level quite well. Very intelligent, very quick-minded, and they like to take ideas and concept and intellectualize them down to the bone. This aura does not have patience with the emotional needs of children, and instead of being patient and compassionate when around children, they tend to try to control children. And this is the big mistake I've seen from this aura over and over again. However, when emotions are not a problem and children have grown up to pursue some intellectual concept, this aura excels. The next aura is the red-tan aura. Now, this aura is a holistic thinker. That means instead of seeing things logical or linear, or things through time, such as the green and the tan aura, it thinks randomly. It doesn't know where the beginning is, and it doesn't know where the end is. Now, this aura, because of its ways of thinking, is actually very good with children. This aura also tends to be very friendly and compassionate towards others, very loving in many ways. Therefore, they do well with children. The one problem that they may face in a lockstep linear kind of education system is that they can't follow such a tight regimen. So they have to adapt to that first. However, once they do adapt to the way education is taught, they can do very well with children, provided that they don't get lost in trying to make themselves fit the system as opposed to just teaching naturally the way that they learned, at random, holistically, and so on. So again, this aura tends to be a hit or miss in the education system. It really depends on the individual. Sometimes I've seen them do very well with children, and other times a complete disaster. And again, that was mostly based on the fact that they were trying to adjust their way of thinking to fit the system, as opposed to just allowing themselves to teach naturally the way that they learn and the way that children will learn, which is at random. Especially in subjects such as language, music, art, and things like that. Those are pretty creative and random processes as opposed to things like science and math. However, so having said that, this aura tends to also enjoy the intellectual pursuit of research or mechanical things such as computers. Therefore, they can make good teachers in the university if they're teaching specialized skills such as computer programming and the like. Now, the next aura, we start getting into the emotional group. And the first one here, the blue tan aura, is ideal for children, reasonably good for high school and even university. This aura, like the yellow, is equipped with all of the needs that a child could have: playtime, compassion for the little dramas in life. This aura does not like to see conflict, similar to how yellows see the world, and therefore could easily make two enemies friends in no time at all. This aura is very patient and also detailed-oriented, but in a way children can comprehend what the teacher is trying to explain, largely due to this aura having enormous amount of patience with anyone with a hard luck story. The next aura is the blue, and the blue is the natural nurturing aura within the entire spectrum, the mother aura. And of course they make excellent teachers. The one thing they have trouble with is because they are so emotional themselves, anybody with a hard luck story they might get emotionally attached to and cry more than the child does. However, through time and discipline, this aura tends to work that out pretty quickly and can handle pretty much any kind of scenario that may be thrown at them in the daily routine of teaching. They are excellent with children. All the way up to probably junior high school, this aura excels. Beyond that, they may find that the university level and even the high school level a little too clinical for them to emotionally adjust to, because these are emotional thinkers. They tend to do very well in literature as opposed to math and science. And therefore, where children at a younger age are singing ABC songs, for example, they do very well. The next aura is the violet. Now, the violet is dealing with ego issues, and probably teaching children is a little bit beneath them. Most of the violets that I know don't like teaching children. This aura does much better at the university level, where they can grasp tense intellectual concepts such as philosophy, science, research, psychology, or anything they think they can make their mark with. Working with children would be a difficult scenario for this aura because they're too caught up in their ego and their ego needs to make their mark on the world than to entertain some young kids. The next aura is the lavender. Now, the lavender makes a great child therapist or a teacher where in an institute that encourages creative teaching or holistic teaching or teaching that is not too clinical and by the book, more intuitive. Any place like that, they make excellent teachers. However, if they work in an education system that is too lockstep or too rigid, they will feel like they cannot achieve their purpose as a teacher fully, and may even carry guilt complexes that they can't fulfill the curriculum the way the system wants them to. It's not natural for the lavender to follow such a lockstep system. It's much easier for them to be creative. Art teachers are excellent for this aura, as well as music teachers. Any kind of teaching where creativity and free thought and free thinking, all of these things are encouraged. Now, the next aura is the crystal. Now, the crystal can be teachers because they're lockstep linear thinkers, but this aura tends to gravitate towards the healing profession. And if they are in the education system, it's more likely going to be at the university level because they're so intelligent. Likely, they're going to be working in the medical field or teaching in the medical field if they become teachers. Their way of teaching would be pretty much the way the 10 aura teaches. Therefore, their interaction with children, because of their lack of social skills, would not do as well as if they were teaching in, say, the university level. The last aura is, of course, the indigo aura, and the indigo auras usually don't teach teaching as a profession. Sometimes they do, and again, they're so intelligent and flexible, they can pretty much do anything, and are very intuitive, very playful, and could easily adjust for the psychological needs for children. So if the indigo does choose the path of a teacher, for example, they can teach anywhere from the nursery school all the way up to the university. It depends on the will of the indigo more than anything else. Not that they're suited or not. It's whether if they want to be a teacher or not. If they want to be something, they can be it. That's the gift of the indigo. So that really covers pretty much all of the auras as teachers. Now, let's say you're one of these auras and you're teaching children, and I can give you some ideas on how you might want to adjust your class in order to have all of your students at least get something from your class. And that's the key thing. If you teach in the logical linear lockstep system that we have now, you're only going to be able to teach the logical linear step students. And that's not going to be very effective for the kid who wants to kick the soccer ball the minute the bell rings for recess, or the other kid in the corner who's just spacing out and drawing pictures on the wall, and so on and so forth. Now, because parents are becoming less and less involved with their children, a lot of children need to have more emotional support than they did in the past. This is very unfortunate, and therefore, if you are a teacher, I do recommend working with students or classrooms that have few in numbers. The fewer students, the better. This will allow you to divide your energy creatively and efficiently amongst the entire class without overwhelming yourself. I've seen some classrooms in Tokyo, for example, that are 39, 40 people, and with one teacher leading, and that's just really the only way they're going to be able to teach the student anything is by this conveyor belt lockstep system that they've created in this country, which is very good for math and science, but for everything else, it's impossible. A lot of people have claimed that the education system in Japan is a little bit too militant for their taste. Now, having said that, let's move on. If you have a classroom of a reasonable size, say anywhere around 16 to 20 students, you might want to try experimenting with whatever subject that you're teaching by teaching that subject through music, through physical activity, through games, through lockstep linear teaching, through art or other creative activities. In other words, experiment in all the realms of learning and see how each student reacts. This has been very beneficial for me. When I teach English in this country, I have the students sometimes play a sport, but they have to speak English. I have them sing songs, which is very helpful for pretty much everyone. I have them do math in English, which is very good for the lockstep thinkers. I have them do arts and crafts, which is good for their creative thinking in English. I don't make any particular order in all of these. I do it randomly for the holistic thinkers. And this is actually natural for the way students actually learn language. It's never lockstep. You don't go home to your mother and say, "Hi, Mom, I have a pen in my pocket. There's a book on the table. Do you have any ice cream in the refrigerator?" We don't speak like that. It's pretty much random. But that's actually how it's taught in this country at this time. And I find it mind-boggling that they teach it this way, because after 100 years you're never going to learn the language this way, much less many other subjects. Now, Japanese do tend to encourage their students to study very hard. So they do spend an enormous amount of time studying, which of course adds to the earlier problem called hikikomori, where the student just, drops out of school, drops out of life in general, lives with their parents, and just pursues their hobbies until their death. I mean, let's face it, education should be fun, should be entertaining. Otherwise, you're not going to want to participate in it. Most of the students who are taught English in a lockstep manner, for example, begin to shut it out by the early or middle part of junior high school. It just gets too boring, too many details, too many unnecessary things taught. I mean, let's face it, at that age level, you have kids who just can't wait until that bell rings so they can go kick a ball. Which is totally understandable when you have a teacher who repeats the phrase, "There's a book in the shelf," over and over and over again. Okay, just so to recap, again, the basic ways most people will think are as follows. The first, hands-on, learning through physical activity. The second, logical, linear thinkers, the way the education is designed at this time. Next, emotional. Those are the people like the Blues and the Blue Tans who learn through music, art, and or literature, etc., etc. And then we have the holistic thinkers who think in random order, which tend to be very creative thinkers or intuitive thinkers who can sort of feel out what the meaning is as opposed to trying to intellectually grasp it. It's kind of funny how the holistic, intuitive thinkers learn. They sort of feel it out, or the randomness of information put into their intellect or into their psyche suddenly makes sense to them on a given day, where they didn't grasp it on the day that they were taught it, but days later it sort of popped into their head, oh, that's what that meant. That actually happens to the red tan and the lavender aura quite often. These two auras are often noted as being late achievers. They actually grasp many complex concepts at the same time, but can't regurgitate them until much later, which is generally how children learn anyways. They grasp all kinds of information. They absorb all kinds of information, only to regurgitate it sometime later. But our present-day lockstep education system sort of interferes with that process. So a lot of children who supposedly were very intelligent at a very early age later don't do well within the system and are considered underachievers, even though they actually can do quite well. It's just the system jamming their natural flow of learning. Now, on a side note, somewhat related to problems I'm having within the education system, I noticed that some of the classes I teach, which have an overwhelming amount of troubled students, seem to be connected to parents who have ego. Most of the classes I have now are a lot of fun, but every now and then I get a class that is just sheer chaos. And when I discover who the parents are, 99% of the time, most of the parents in that class are related to either the Board of Education or the government or some other institute where ego is prime. Told me a lot. Anytime you see disorder in your life, ego is near, without a doubt. This I confirmed just very recently. I went to several classes and discovered that there was a certain pattern repeating in each class. And these classes all had parents that were in positions of power, or were elitists, or were keep up with the Joneses players. Simply put, the more the parents were worried about their image and financial situation in life, the worse the kids and the class were. Well, that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Leave a like or share this video to others who are in the education field. I would be happy to answer any questions about the experiences I've had dealing with children and some of the problems we're facing in this world at this time. Thanks again for listening. Hope to see you in the next video.